Hi, it's Pixie Glore here, and I'm coming to you today to teach some painting. And I thought I'd start out by showing you my studio. This is the place where I teach students, and on the back wall there is some of my work. I don't know about you, but I like to see the work of somebody who I am taking the time to study under. You can see there's both watercolors and oil paintings there, and I also do a lot of plein air landscapes, which I pulled one out right here that's a fairly recent one. They're very colorful. And then where I work is over in this corner down here. And the right side over here is where I do oils, and the left side over here is where I do my watercolors. And then I like to look out my window here at my little horse, who does a little more looking in at me than I do looking out at him. And anyway, there's a little quick view of my studio. It's up here in the Colorado mountains, and I've got a beautiful place. If I want to paint, all I've got to do is look out the window. But we're going to get started doing a course, a beginner's course in watercolor. I do it step by step each time. We'll start out with paper and paints and brushes, and then we will move on into the watercolor. And then later on, I will be doing one-off painting projects like mandalas in acrylic and in watercolor, and then possibly eventually some of the oil paintings. So stay tuned. Click the subscribe button below. If you want to see more about my work, go to www.pixieglore.com. And with that, let's get started and have some fun. Okay, guys, here we are in the first day of watercolor. And in order to do watercolor, you have to have supplies. So I thought I'd show you some of the supplies that are needed. We need paper, we need brushes, we need paint, and then we'll need a bucket of water. To start out with, I wanted to show you first different kinds of brushes. So there's flat brushes and round brushes. And the best brushes are what's called a natural hair brush. These are squirrel, and this is a squirrel blend. And then these are Kolansky sables, which are very expensive and very nice. But it isn't really necessary to get the top of the line brush when you first start out, but it is nice to have some 1-inch squares, some rounds, and then a 1/2-inch square. That one is kind of my go-to brush that I've used for years. But you can get these sizes of brushes very inexpensively at some of the local craft stores or online. Eventually you will want to get some good brushes. This brush here is called a rigger. This is for making fine lines, and it's a lot of fun. So that's a little bit about brushes. If you could feel it, you could see that the natural hair brushes are really soft, and the ones that are synthetic are real springy. So both have their uses. Now, as far as paper goes, there's all different kinds of watercolor blocks that you can get. This, for starters, this Canson watercolor block is one I like to use. It's a nice white paper, and you can cut it in half, and it comes in a few different sizes. It's a synthetic paper, and it's pretty good. It's not bad. It's an okay for starting out and for playing around kind of stuff. You can also buy what's called watercolor blocks, and these come in all different sizes. This brand here is Sennelier, but they also have Winsor Newton watercolor blocks and a few other brands. And it holds the paper taut, and you paint it, and then you slip a knife in here and cut it out when you're done. And this little size here is great for travel. I also have just little I always keep a sketchbook with me, and this can be any kind of paper, because I like to do little thumbnails. My son's played in this a few times when he was younger. But where are they? There's some thumbnails in here somewhere. I just saw them. So you can see an idea of what a thumbnail sketch is before you paint. I obviously picked the wrong one. There. There's a few. Thumbnails are just little squares where you work out your design. And I'll get more into that later in another lesson. But it's nice to have a little sketchbook. Okay, so that's just plain paper. And then we get to good paper. And this paper here is Fabriano, and they come in sheets that are 22 by 30 inch square, and you cut them down. My favorite go-to is 140 pound. And Arches is another brand that I've used for years, and now I'm kind of using Fabriano a lot. It's a little bit whiter, but Arches also has a bright white, and you can get these in packets online or at your local art store by the sheet. But I would recommend that you start out on these little more inexpensive pieces, and then eventually we work to this. And as we go along, you'll see what the difference is. So when you get these big pieces of paper, they're nice because the way you cut them is you fold them and break them. So I want this. I think this is 5 across, 5.5 across, and I want it to be 7. So approximately about right here, because that's a good size for a small frame. So in order to cut it down, you just fold it, unfold it, and fold it back and forth until it's ready to tear apart. There's also another little trick, is there's a little razor blade like this. Here it is. Like this that you can get, which is really nice on the larger sheets. So now I have a nice little card size there. All right, and now the next thing I want to show you, that's a little bit about paper. They also have a paper that's 300 pounds, and a lot of people just love that. And when you get really advanced, you can use it too. It's quite expensive to work with, but it holds its shape. And when I do a really big watercolor, I prefer to use a 300-pound cold press. Oh, it comes in cold press, hot press, and rough. So depending on what you're doing, it has different textures to it. Now a little bit about palettes. This is kind of my go-to palette. I've had it for years. It's broken apart now, and I use this for travel, and I lay it out according to the color wheel. So if you look at a color wheel, say you start with yellow, it'll go into your oranges and your reds, your deep reds, and then I hop over here into purples and blues and greens and back to yellows. And then over here I have a few dark colors. I hardly ever use any black. In fact, I never use black. I always mix blacks. That's one palette. There's all kinds of palettes. This is kind of a sweet one that I just found recently that I thought would be fun for travel, because it's got all kinds of fun, yummy colors. And it comes with these watercolor pens. You put water in it and get your color from here, and they're pretty nice, and they're very pointed, synthetic. This one here is a sort of a flat one, and that's a pointy one. So I haven't had this too long, as you can tell, but it's got different wells for cleaning in, and you know, kind of fun for fits in your backpack when you go for a hike. And then over here is my messy palette. And I'm going to bring it up to show you because I keep it to the side. Now this is my palette that I keep in my studio, and this one is a ceramic palette, but they have them this size with lids that are plastic that are very good. I used one for years and years, and they're fine. But for in my studio, I learned about these ceramic palettes from a friend, and I just like the way the watercolor works inside the palette. It's just nice. It's nice for in the studio, but it's too heavy to carry around with you anywhere. And again, I lay it out like the rainbow, or like the rainbow or the color wheel. Okay, and then the next thing, oh, here's some little pad of paper too. They all come different. I haven't experimented on this one much, but there's all different kinds of paper, and they're fun to play with. So watercolor itself comes in, like you saw, those pans, or this is a little one that I had that is to stick in your pocket that you can get. I think I won this at some competition once, so I don't know. I never really used it at all, hardly, but a lot of people like them. This is what I mostly do. These are tube watercolors, okay? And I fill my palette, I just showed you, with tubes. They come in big tubes and little tubes. And I have all different colors in here. Generally on a given painting, I will stick to a few colors, a red, a yellow, and a blue. Sometimes a warm blue and a cool blue, warm red, cool red, and warm yellow, cool yellow. But I don't like to limit myself because there are lots of fun, yummy colors to play with, like peacock blue and opera, and these are really fun to throw in later on when you get good at it. But these are professional grade, and they're expensive. So when you get good at watercolor, you want to get these ones. Now this is a Daler Rowney, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, brand. And you can pick up these at Walmart, a whole set of these, for not very expensive. These are really good ones to get started with. In your local art supply store, you can get some different ones. There are some that I don't really like that are sets like this. This set here, I think this came from Michael's Art Mate. I don't like these at all, but you know, every watercolor really varies a lot by brand, so you just really have to experiment. But once you get where you really want to save your watercolor, you want to go to professional watercolors because they're light fast. That means that they don't fade. So there's a little bit about paint, and I will get more into watercolor like that later. So, oh, and then with paper, you want to have something to put your paper down on, and people have done all kinds of different things over the years. This is a sheet of plexiglass, and later on I'll show you some real fun techniques with plexiglass where you get it all wet, slap it down, make washes. It's really fun. But what I do a lot of is you need to get a board. So this is just a board, and this is tape from the hardware store, and it's low tack. It doesn't stick. And even so, you don't want to leave it on your paper for real long because that cheaper paper will tear. But I tape it down, and then I'm ready to go. And this is just a little one that I was making of for some cards. But I have these boards in all different sizes. A quarter size sheet is 8.5, ends up being 11 by 14, so I have a board that side. And that's just a plain old board like this that I've gessoed one side, and then I can put the paper down and take the tape and tape it down. Now I used to, years ago, when I first started to do this, would take the tape, the paper, staple it down, get it all wet, let it dry, and it would stretch the paper really taut, really tight. But then when you took it off, you had all these staple holes that you had to cut off. And I found that that was just more work than it was worth. And I learned about this tape method from, I'm out here, a really well-known watercolorist here in Denver, and I've been using it ever since. And if you get any warping, all you have to do is take your watercolor, wet the back side, put it down between boards, and press it, and it goes perfectly flat. So I think that's about it. Oh, here's a blotter. This is a nice thing to have too. You could just roll up some paper towels. This was a roll of toilet paper. I took out the middle, and then I folded paper towels over and wrapped it around it. And slowly I take them off, and I'm just about due to wrap some more paper towels, and this will last years. And then when I'm in the field, I just make a little roll-up one of plain old paper towels so that I have something to blot my brushes with, because watercolor is all about how wet it is. It's either really wet or somewhat wet or really dry. So I'll make something like that while I'm out in the field to blot with, and then I keep a box of tissue around in my hand or another paper towel. And as we go along, you'll see how that works. And that's it for the supplies. And you have a great day.